Colorado Territory, 1873. The dust of the trail had long since settled into every crease of Levi Sutton's clothing as he guided his horse along the winding path to Silver Creek. At 25, he'd already seen enough of the West's cruelties to believe that a man survived best by keeping to himself. The open range was for cattle and cowboys, not for putting down roots or opening one's heart. That's what he told himself anyway, as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the scrubby hills. "Just deliver the girl to her new home and be on your way," he muttered to his palomino. Simple as that. The letter from the orphanage matron in Denver had been specific. 18-year-old Tabitha Anderson needed escort to Silver Creek, where a position as a schoolteacher awaited her. The arrangement seemed straightforward enough when Levi had agreed to it 3 days ago. He needed the money, and the route took him back toward the Triple R Ranch where he worked as a ranch hand. What he hadn't counted on was the nagging sense of responsibility that came with the task, or the way the girl's quiet resilience reminded him of everything he'd tried to forget about his own past. As Silver Creek's modest collection of buildings came into view, Levi adjusted his hat against the setting sun. His boss had connections with the town council and had volunteered Levi for this job, knowing he was heading back from Denver anyway. The Triple R could spare him for a few extra days, they'd said. "Might do you good to remember there's more to life than horses and cattle," his boss had commented with a knowing look that made Levi uncomfortable. Levi shook his head, clearing away the memory. He'd seen too many good men lose themselves to whiskey and heartbreak in frontier towns. Love was a luxury few could afford out here, and he had neither the time nor the inclination for such complications. His thoughts drifted back to the young woman riding slightly behind him. Tabitha Anderson had barely spoken during their journey, answering his questions with polite but brief replies. Her chestnut-brown hair was neatly pinned beneath a modest bonnet, her simple blue calico dress practical for travel but somehow elegant on her slender frame. Occasionally he'd caught her studying the landscape with thoughtful green eyes, as though memorizing every detail of the journey. "That's Silver Creek up ahead, Miss Anderson," he called over his shoulder. "We'll be there before sundown." She urged her horse forward until she rode beside him. "Thank you, Mr. Sutton. I appreciate your patience with my inexperienced riding." "You've done fine," he replied, surprised at how quickly she'd adapted to life in the saddle. "Most city folk complain a lot more." A smile tugged at her lips. "I may have grown up in an orphanage, Mr. Sutton, but I've never been one to complain about circumstances I cannot change." Something about her quiet dignity made him uncomfortable. It contradicted everything he believed about people, that they were ultimately selfish and unreliable when times got tough. As they approached the town's single street, Levi noticed a small crowd gathered outside the general store. The sight immediately put him on edge. Gatherings in small towns rarely meant good news. "Wait here," he instructed Tabitha, dismounting and tying his horse to a hitching post. He approached the crowd, catching fragments of concerned conversation. "Sheriff says the fever's taken 3 already. Closed the Miller place completely. Wouldn't let anyone in or out." Levi tapped the shoulder of a gray-haired man he recognized as the blacksmith. "What's happening?" The man turned, eyes widening in recognition. "Levi Sutton, didn't expect to see you in town. It's scarlet fever, broke out at the north end of town 3 days ago. Doc Williams has quarantined the affected homes, but folks are scared." Levi frowned. "I've brought the new schoolteacher from Denver. Where can I find Mayor Collins?" A heavy-set woman nearby overheard and joined their conversation. "Mayor's down with the fever himself, his wife too. That's why everyone's gathered, trying to decide what to do about the school and such." Levi's stomach tightened. He glanced back at Tabitha, who remained patiently waiting with the horses, unaware that her new position and lodging arrangements were likely in jeopardy. The woman followed his gaze. "Is that her, poor thing, coming all this way? The schoolteacher's quarters are in the same building as the school, and they've closed it down as a precaution." "Who's in charge while the mayor's ill?" Levi asked. "Town council's meeting tonight. My husband's on it. He says they'll likely postpone school opening for at least a month, maybe longer." Levi thanked the woman and walked back to Tabitha, his mind racing. He had promised the orphanage matron he would see her safely settled. Now that promise seemed impossible to keep. "Is something wrong, Mr. Sutton?" Tabitha asked, noting his troubled expression. He looked up at her, seeing concern in those intelligent green eyes. "There's been an outbreak of scarlet fever. The mayor who arranged your position is ill, and they've closed the school as a precaution." Her face paled slightly, but she maintained her composure. "I see what happens now." "I'm not sure," he admitted, "but I won't leave you stranded. Let me see what I can find out." As the sun set behind the mountains, Levi made inquiries throughout town. The news was consistently bleak: no available lodging, no immediate need for a teacher, and growing concern about the spreading illness. The town council, when finally assembled, could offer little help. "We still want Miss Anderson as our teacher," the acting mayor assured him, "but we cannot in good conscience bring her into town during an outbreak, perhaps in a month or two, once the danger has passed." By the time Levi returned to Tabitha, who waited patiently outside the council meeting, night had fallen completely. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "They want you to come back when the fever has passed." "Could be a month, maybe more." She nodded slowly. "And is there anywhere I might stay in the meantime?" Levi ran a hand through his hair, hat tucked under his arm. "Nothing in town. They're scared of the fever spreading." He hesitated, then made a decision that would change everything. "The Triple R Ranch is about half a day's ride from here. I work there. It's not much, but there's a small cabin that no one's using. You could stay there until things settle in Silver Creek." Tabitha studied his face in the lamplight spilling from the nearby window. "That's very kind, Mr. Sutton, but I wouldn't want to impose." "It's not an imposition. I promise to see you settled, and I keep my promises." The intensity in his voice surprised even him. "Besides, the ranch could use an educated person. There are hands with children who have never had proper schooling." Something shifted in her expression, hope perhaps. "You think they might need a teacher at your ranch?" "I can't promise anything permanent, but it would give you something to do while waiting for Silver Creek to sort itself out." After a moment's consideration, she nodded. "Then I accept your offer, Mr. Sutton, thank you." That night they took rooms at a small farm outside town, where the owner was willing to put them up in separate quarters of the house. As Levi lay staring at the rough-hewn ceiling beams, he wondered what had possessed him to make such an offer. The Triple R's owner hadn't authorized him to bring a stranger to the ranch, let alone offer the old surveyor's cabin. Yet something about leaving Tabitha Anderson stranded in a town gripped by illness felt wrong. She had traveled all this way based on a promise of employment and shelter. If he couldn't deliver her to the promised destination, the least he could do was provide an alternative. By dawn, they were on the trail again, heading southwest toward the sprawling grasslands that housed the Triple R's cattle operation. Tabitha rode more confidently now, her back straight and her gaze fixed ahead. Occasionally, she would ask questions about the ranch, how many people lived there, what the work entailed, what the surrounding country was like. "It's rough living," Levi warned as they stopped to rest the horses near a small creek. "Not like Denver." Tabitha smiled as she carefully folded her handkerchief after taking a drink. "Mr. Sutton, I grew up in an orphanage with 30 other girls. We shared everything from beds to books. I'm quite accustomed to rough living, as you call it." Something about her quiet confidence challenged his assumptions. "Why teaching?" he asked suddenly. "What made you come all this way for a position in a town you'd never seen?" She considered the question while smoothing her skirts. "I had few options in Denver. The orphanage taught us practical skills, cooking, sewing, basic arithmetic, but my heart was always in books. One of the matrons noticed and allowed me to help teach the younger children. When I turned 18, she helped secure this position." Her eyes met his. "It was either this or domestic service in someone's home. I chose the path that offered the most freedom." Levi nodded, understanding the desire for freedom all too well. "We should keep moving if we want to reach the ranch by sundown." As they rode, the landscape opened into vast rolling plains dotted with cattle. In the distance, the Rocky Mountains rose like sentinels against the blue sky. When they crested a rise in the early afternoon, Levi pointed to a collection of buildings nestled in a protected valley. "That's the Triple R. Not much to look at, but it's one of the better operations in these parts." As they approached, several ranch hands noticed their arrival and paused in their work. Levi waved to them, feeling suddenly self-conscious about the young woman riding beside him. The men would talk, that was certain. Richard Ramsey, the ranch owner, emerged from the main house as they dismounted in the yard. A broad-shouldered man in his 50s with a silver-streaked beard, he looked at Tabitha with undisguised curiosity. "Didn't expect you back with company, Sutton," he called, approaching them. Mr. Ramsey, this is Miss Tabitha Anderson. She was meant to be the new schoolteacher in Silver Creek, but there's scarlet fever in town. They've closed the school for now. Levi removed his hat. I was hoping she might use the old surveyor's cabin until things settled down. It seemed wrong to leave her stranded. Ramsey studied Tabitha, who met his gaze steadily. Ma'am, he said with a nod of greeting, that's quite a predicament. I don't wish to impose, Mr. Ramsey, Tabitha said. Mr. Sutton has been most kind, but if my presence would cause any inconvenience. Nonsense, Ramsey interrupted. We've got space aplenty. The cabin hasn't been used since spring, needs a good cleaning, but the roof's sound. He glanced at Levi with an unreadable expression. Sutton here can help you get settled. My wife will want to meet you, been wanting another woman to talk to for ages. Relief washed over Levi. Thank you, sir. As Ramsey walked away, he called over his shoulder, Sutton, see me after supper. We need to discuss a few things. The surveyor's cabin sat on a gentle slope about a quarter-mile from the main ranch buildings. It was a simple one-room structure with a small porch facing west toward the mountains. Inside was dusty but intact, a bed frame, table, 2 chairs, and a small cast-iron stove. It's not much, Levi apologized as they entered. Tabitha walked slowly around the space, running a finger along the window sill and looking out at the view. It's perfect, she said quietly. My own space, I've never had that before. Something in her voice made Levi pause in unloading her few belongings. He watched as she stood in a shaft of sunlight from the window, her profile illuminated and her expression one of wonder rather than disappointment. I'll bring fresh bedding from the main house, he said, feeling suddenly intrusive in this moment of her private joy. And water for washing up. Mrs. Ramsey will likely send food for tonight. Tabitha turned to him. Thank you, Mr. Sutton, not just for the cabin, but for not abandoning me in Silver Creek. It was more than most would have done. Uncomfortable with her gratitude, Levi simply nodded and stepped outside. As promised, he returned with supplies and helped her clean the small cabin, though she insisted on doing most of the work herself. By evening, the place looked transformed, windows gleaming, floor swept, bed made with fresh linens. As predicted, Mrs. Ramsey sent a basket with a hot meal and introduced herself, a pleasant, practical woman who seemed genuinely delighted to have another female at the ranch. She invited Tabitha to join them for meals at the main house whenever she wished. That evening after supper with the ranch hands, Levi met with Richard Ramsey in the small office attached to the main house. Mighty unusual bringing a young woman back with you, Ramsey said without preamble, pouring 2 small glasses of whiskey and pushing one toward Levi. It wasn't planned, Levi explained. The situation in town. I'm not questioning your judgment, son, Ramsey interrupted, just making an observation. In the 3 years you've worked this ranch, you've never so much as looked twice at any of the girls in town. Then you ride in with this one and offer her shelter without consulting me first. Levi felt heat rising in his face. It's not like that, sir. I gave my word to the orphanage matron that I'd see her safely settled. When Silver Creek couldn't take her, I couldn't just leave her there. Ramsey studied him over the rim of his glass. Honor's a fine thing in a man, so is compassion. He set his glass down. The cabin is hers for as long as she needs it. But there's something else I want to discuss. Relief and wariness mingled in Levi's chest. Sir. I've been thinking about that north pasture, the one by Miller Creek. It's good land, but too far from the main operation to use efficiently. Ramsey leaned back in his chair. I'd be willing to sell it 40 acres, including that natural spring, to the right buyer. Levi blinked, confused by the sudden change in topic. I'm sure you'd find a buyer in town. Ramsey laughed. I'm talking about you, Sutton. You've put aside more of your wages than most. Been here 3 years without much to show for it except that horse and your reputation as a reliable hand. You're offering to sell me land, Levi asked, disbelief evident in his voice. I'm offering you a chance to build something of your own. A man should have something that belongs to him. Ramsey's eyes were knowing, something worth staying for. Levi stared into his untouched whiskey, mind racing. He'd always told himself he wasn't meant to settle down, that the rootless life suited him best. Yet he had been saving his money, though for what purpose, he'd never fully articulated even to himself. Think on it, Ramsey said, rising to indicate their meeting was over. Land like that won't come available often, but be clear about your intentions regarding Miss Anderson. A single woman out here needs protection, not complications. Later that night, Levi walked back to the bunkhouse under a canopy of stars, his thoughts in turmoil. From the distance, he could see a lamp still burning in the surveyor's cabin. The sight of it, that small beacon of light on the darkened prairie, stirred something unexpected within him. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a different kind of life than the one he'd resigned himself to living. The following days established a rhythm. Tabitha quickly became a familiar presence at the ranch, taking meals with the Ramseys and offering to help Mrs. Ramsey with household tasks. When the ranch hands learned she was a teacher, several approached her about lessons for their children. Within a week, she had organized informal classes in the afternoons for 5 children who lived on the ranch property. Levi found himself watching her from a distance as he went about his work. She carried herself with quiet dignity, adapting to ranch life with surprising ease. On the rare occasions their paths crossed directly, their exchanges remained polite but brief. He told himself it was better this way, maintaining distance until she could move on to Silver Creek. Yet he couldn't deny the way his attention invariably found her, noticing how she'd wear her hair in a simple braid when teaching the children under the big cottonwood tree, or how her eyes lit up when she discovered something new about ranch life. 2 weeks after their arrival, Levi was repairing a section of fence near the surveyor's cabin when Tabitha approached carrying a canteen. "Mrs. Ramsey thought you might be thirsty," she said, offering it to him. "Thank you," he replied, taking a long drink. The late September sun beat down relentlessly, and he'd been working since dawn. Instead of leaving immediately, Tabitha lingered, watching as he hammered a nail into the fence post. "I received a letter from Silver Creek yesterday," she said finally. "The council sent word that the fever has claimed 12 lives, including the mayor." Levi paused in his work. "I'm sorry to hear that. They say it will be at least 2 months before they can consider reopening the school." Her voice remained steady, but he detected a note of uncertainty beneath her composure. "I don't wish to impose on Mr. Ramsey's hospitality for so long." Levi set down his hammer. "You're not imposing. The children are learning, and Mrs. Ramsey enjoys your company." Tabitha smiled faintly, "Perhaps. But I came west to be self-sufficient, Mr. Sutton. Depending on charity wasn't part of that plan." "It's not charity," he said more forcefully than intended. "You're earning your keep." "With informal lessons under a tree," she shook her head. "I should find proper employment." Levi wiped sweat from his brow, considering her words. "There's a town about 20 miles south, Cedar Ridge, smaller than Silver Creek but growing. They might need someone with your skills." Hope flickered in her eyes. "Would it be possible to inquire there?" "I'm heading that way tomorrow to deliver some horses. You could ride along if you'd like." "I would appreciate that very much." As she turned to go, Levi found himself adding, "But don't feel you need to rush away from here. The cabin is yours for as long as you need it." She paused, looking back at him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. "Thank you, Mr. Sutton, for everything." The following day, they rode to Cedar Ridge together. The small town was indeed growing. New buildings under construction spoke of ambition and opportunity. While Levi conducted his business, Tabitha made inquiries about teaching positions or other suitable work. They met again at noon outside the general store where Levi had purchased supplies for the ranch. "Any luck?" he asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Perhaps. The mercantile owner mentioned they've been discussing the need for a school, but nothing formal has been established yet." She hesitated. "He suggested I speak with the banker about organizing classes for the town children in the meantime. Apparently, several families would pay for proper instruction." Levi nodded, surprised by the twinge of relief he felt. "Worth looking into." As they prepared to leave town, dark clouds gathered overhead. By the time they were halfway back to the Triple R, the sky had turned ominously black. "We should find shelter," Levi called above the rising wind. "Storm's coming fast." They diverted toward a line of trees along a creek bed, searching for adequate cover. Just as the first heavy raindrops began to fall, Levi spotted an old trapper's hut partially hidden among the cottonwoods. "There," he pointed, urging his horse forward. They barely made it inside before the heavens opened completely. Rain hammered against the crude shake roof as they settled the nervous horses in the attached lean-to. The hut itself was small, a single room with a stone fireplace and little else. "Place hasn't been used in years," Levi observed, checking the chimney for blockages. Finding it relatively clear, he set about building a small fire with the dry wood stacked nearby. "But it'll keep us dry until this passes." Tabitha stood just inside the doorway, watching the driving rain. Lightning flashed, illuminating her profile, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. She jumped slightly at the sound. Not fond of storms, Levi asked, coaxing flames from the kindling. They always frightened me as a child, she admitted. The orphanage had metal roofs. The noise was terrifying during heavy rain. As the fire caught, warm light filled the small space. Tabitha moved closer, removing her damp coat and laying it near the hearth to dry. Levi couldn't help but notice how the firelight caught in her chestnut hair, bringing out hints of gold that he hadn't noticed before. Likely we'll be here a while, he said, moving to check on the horses again. These summer storms can be fierce, but usually pass quickly. When he returned, Tabitha had settled on the floor near the fire, her back against the wall. She had removed a small book from her bag and was reading in the flickering light. "What are you reading?" he asked, sitting down across from her. She showed him the spine Wordsworth's poems. It was a parting gift from the orphanage matron. She knew how I loved poetry. Levi nodded, uncomfortable with the intimate atmosphere the storm had created. Outside, rain continued to pound and occasional thunder rumbled overhead. "You're not what I expected," Tabitha said suddenly, closing her book. "How so?" "When they told me a cowboy would escort me to Silver Creek, I imagined someone. Different, rougher perhaps." She studied him with those thoughtful green eyes. "You're gentle with your horse, you keep your word, you notice things others might miss." Uncomfortable with her assessment, Levi poked at the fire. "Don't let appearances fool you, Miss Anderson. I've done my share of rough living." "I believe that," she said softly, "but that's not all you are." The conversation was venturing into territory Levi typically avoided. "What about you?" he asked, deflecting. "Why, teaching must be other work that pays better." A smile touched her lips. "It's not about the money. When I teach, I feel useful, connected. In the orphanage, we had so little that was truly our own, but knowledge, once you have it, no one can take it away." She looked into the flames. "I want to give that to children who might otherwise never have it." Her answer revealed a depth of character that both attracted and unnerved him. To hide his reaction, Levi rose and moved to the doorway, checking the weather. The rain had slackened somewhat, though dark clouds still dominated the sky. "We should be able to leave soon," he said, his back to her. "Storm's moving east." "Mr. Sutton," Tabitha said after a moment, "may I ask you something personal?" He turned slightly. "Depends on the question." "Why did you really help me? You could have left me in Silver Creek and completed your obligation." The directness of her question caught him off guard. "I told you, I gave my word to see you safely settled." "Is that the only reason?" Levi met her gaze, finding no easy escape from her simple query. "I know what it's like to be abandoned," he admitted finally. "To have promises broken. I wouldn't do that to anyone if I could help it." Understanding dawned in her expression. "You were orphaned too." "Not exactly. My father left when I was 8. My mother remarried a man who made it clear I wasn't welcome." The words came easier than he expected after years of keeping his past locked away. "I left home at 16. Been moving from ranch to ranch ever since. Until the Triple R. 3 years is the longest I've stayed anywhere since childhood," he acknowledged. "Mr. Ramsey is a fair man." Tabitha absorbed this information silently. Then with gentle certainty she said, "That explains why you understand the importance of home, of having a place where you belong." Her insight struck too close to truths he rarely examined. "We should get ready to leave," he said abruptly, "rain's letting up." They rode back to the ranch in clearing weather, the storm clouds retreating eastward and leaving a fresh-washed world behind. Their conversation in the trapper's hut had shifted something between them, a subtle change Levi couldn't quite name but felt nonetheless. October arrived with cooling temperatures and changing colors across the landscape. Tabitha continued her informal classes for the ranch children, while also corresponding with the banker in Cedar Ridge about establishing more formal arrangements there. Twice more, Levi accompanied her to town for meetings, watching from a distance as she confidently presented her qualifications and ideas. Each time they returned to the Triple R, he found himself increasingly conflicted. Her presence had become a fixture in his daily awareness, the light in her cabin window at night, her voice carrying across the yard as she taught, her quiet conversation at meals when he dined at the main house. Richard Ramsey noticed. "Made any decisions about that north pasture?" he asked one evening as they reviewed cattle counts in his office. Still thinking on it, Levi answered, though in truth, he'd been riding out to the property regularly, imagining possibilities he'd never before considered. Thinking won't build a cabin or plant crops, Ramsay observed dryly. Land needs tending, same as anything worth having. Before Levi could respond, there was a commotion outside, the sound of horses arriving at a gallop. They stepped onto the porch to find two riders from Silver Creek dismounting in the yard. Looking for Miss Anderson, one called, recognizing Ramsay. Got a telegram from Denver that needs delivering to her. Levi felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. I'll take you to her, he offered, leading them toward the surveyor's cabin where lamplight still glowed in the window. Tabitha answered his knock immediately, surprise registering on her face at the sight of the visitors. Mr. Sutton, these men have brought a telegram for you, he explained, from Denver. She invited them in, accepting the envelope with trembling fingers. As she read the contents, her face paled visibly. Thank you for bringing this, she said to the messengers. Would you care for coffee or food before you return? They declined politely, explaining they needed to reach Silver Creek by morning. After they departed, Tabitha remained standing in the doorway, the telegram clutched in her hand. Bad news, Levi asked softly. Mrs. Holloway, the matron who arranged my position, has died suddenly. Her voice wavered slightly. The new administrator is reviewing all placements. They want me to return to Denver immediately to assist with the younger children until new arrangements can be made. Levi stared at her, processing the implications. You're leaving. I don't know, she looked down at the paper in her hand. They've been good to me, I owe them so much. You don't owe them your future, Levi said with unexpected intensity. You came west to build something for yourself. She looked up at him, conflict evident in her expression. What choice do I have? Silver Creek still hasn't reopened their school. Cedar Ridge hasn't committed to anything formal. I have no actual position. Levi stepped closer. You have options here. The ranch children are learning more than they ever have. Cedar Ridge will eventually need a proper teacher, and he stopped abruptly, uncertain how to continue. And, she prompted softly. And there are people here who would, he struggled, unfamiliar with expressing such thoughts, who would miss you if you left. The admission hung between them in the cool night air. Tabitha's eyes searched his face, looking for something he wasn't sure how to show. I need time to think, she said finally. This isn't a decision to make hastily. Levi nodded, stepping back, of course. Good night, Miss Anderson. As he walked away, he heard her softly call, Levi. It was the first time she had used his given name. He turned back. Thank you for telling me that, she said simply. That night, Levi lay awake in the bunkhouse, staring at the ceiling and confronting truths he'd been avoiding for weeks. The possibility of Tabitha leaving forced him to acknowledge what her presence had come to mean to him. The thought of returning to life as it was before she arrived left an emptiness he couldn't ignore. Before dawn, he rose and saddled his horse, riding out to the north pasture as first light touched the eastern sky. The 40 acres Ramsay had offered him stretched from the creek up a gentle slope to a natural clearing where a cabin might stand. It was good land, fertile soil, reliable water, protected from the worst winter winds by a ridge of hills. Land a man could build a life on, land that could become a home. As the sun rose fully, Levi made his decision. He rode back to the ranch, cleaned up, and went directly to Ramsay's office. I'll take the north pasture, he announced without preamble. Your asking price is fair. Ramsay looked up from his ledger, a knowing smile crossing his weathered face. What changed your mind? Levi hesitated only briefly. I realized I've been running from putting down roots my entire adult life. Maybe it's time to stop running. Wise decision, Ramsay nodded. I'll have the papers drawn up in Cedar Ridge next week. He studied Levi thoughtfully. Does Miss Anderson know about your plans? Not yet. Might be something to mention, given her current dilemma. Levi left the office with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He had work to finish before he could speak with Tabitha, fence repair that couldn't wait, horses to check on a distant pasture. By the time he returned to the ranch yard in late afternoon, his resolve had only strengthened. He found Tabitha sitting on the porch of her cabin, writing in a small journal. She looked up as he approached, setting aside her writing. May I join you? He asked. She nodded, indicating the empty space beside her on the simple bench. I've been thinking about the telegram, she said as he sat, about what I should do. Have you decided? Almost, she turned to face him more directly. The orphanage gave me shelter when I had none. Education when many girls receive little. For that, I will always be grateful. But you were right, I came west to build my own life, not to continue living according to their needs. Relief washed through him. You're staying then. I'm strongly considering it, but I need something more substantial than temporary classes under a tree. Her green eyes held steady on his. I need to know there's a real future for me here. The opening was clear, yet Levi found himself suddenly nervous. I bought land today, he said, the words coming out more abruptly than intended. The north pasture by Miller Creek, 40 acres. Surprise registered on her face. You're leaving the Triple R. Not immediately. It will take time to build a cabin, prepare for livestock. He took a deep breath. But yes, eventually, I'm establishing my own place. That's wonderful news, she said, though he detected uncertainty in her voice. You'll make a fine rancher on your own. I don't want to do it alone. The words emerged before he could reconsider them. Tabitha, these past weeks, having you here has made me question everything I believed about my life. About what's possible. Her eyes widened slightly. What are you saying, Levi? I'm saying that I've spent years convincing myself that a man survives best by keeping to himself. That putting down roots only leads to disappointment. He met her gaze directly. You've shown me how wrong I was. Levi, I'm not asking anything of you, he hurried to clarify. I just wanted you to know that there are more reasons to stay than just teaching opportunities. That whatever you decide about your future, there's a place for you here, with me, if you want it. Tabitha was silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then carefully she reached out and placed her hand over his where it rested on the bench between them. When I first arrived here, I thought it was a temporary shelter, just somewhere to wait until my real life could begin in Silver Creek, she said softly. I never expected to find something that felt more like home than anywhere I've ever been. Hope rose in Levi's chest, and now I think perhaps this detour wasn't a detour at all, but the actual destination. Her fingers tightened slightly on his. I would like to see this land of yours if you're willing to show me. The following morning, they rode together to the north pasture. October sunshine bathed the landscape in golden light as Levi proudly showed her the boundaries of his property, pointing out where he envisioned building a house, barns, corrals. They stopped at the highest point, where a natural clearing offered views across the valley to the distant mountains. Tabitha dismounted, walking a few paces to take in the panorama. It's beautiful, she said, her voice full of genuine appreciation. I can see why you chose it. Levi came to stand beside her. I thought the house might go here, facing west so the sunsets would be visible from the porch. She turned to look at him, a question in her eyes. You've given this considerable thought. More than I realized, he admitted. I've been coming here for months, it seems, imagining possibilities I never let myself consider before. What changed? He met her gaze steadily. You arrived. The simplicity of his answer hung between them. Tabitha's expression softened as understanding dawned. Levi, are you building this place with the hope that I might share it with you? Yes, he answered without hesitation. I know it's forward of me, we've known each other only a short while, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. A smile touched her lips. How do you feel? Like I've found something I didn't even know I was looking for. He took a step closer. Like the world makes more sense when you're in it. Those sound like the words of a man in love, she observed softly. Maybe they are. His heart raced at the admission. I've never been in love before, so I can't say for certain. But if it means wanting to build a life with someone, to face each day knowing they'll be part of it, then yes, I suppose that's what this is. Tabitha's eyes shimmered with emotion. I never expected to find love when I came west. I thought I was simply seeking independence, a chance to make my own way. And now, he asked, hope rising in his chest, now I wonder if perhaps we can find both together, independence and connection. A home of our own making. Levi reached for her hand, encouraged when she didn't pull away. Is that what you want, Tabitha, a home with me? It's a serious question, she said thoughtfully. Not one to answer lightly. I wouldn't expect you to. I'm asking for your consideration, not an immediate answer. She squeezed his hand gently. Then yes, I will consider it. Very carefully. They returned to the ranch with a new understanding between them. In the days that followed, Tabitha wrote to the orphanage, explaining her decision to remain in Colorado territory. She also met again with the Cedar Ridge banker, who offered her a temporary position teaching the town's children 3 days a week until a proper school could be established. Meanwhile, Levi began preparations for his new property, ordering lumber to be delivered from the sawmill near Cedar Ridge and making plans for the cabin he would build come spring. Richard Ramsey, seeing his determination, adjusted his work duties to allow time for these preparations. As October gave way to November, their relationship deepened. They rode together on her teaching days, sharing conversations that ranged from childhood memories to dreams for the future. Levi found himself opening up about experiences he'd never shared with anyone: the pain of his father's abandonment, his stepfather's cruelty, his years of drifting from place to place. Tabitha, in turn, spoke of growing up without parents, of feeling invisible among so many orphaned girls, of her determination to create a life defined by her own choices rather than circumstance. One evening in mid-November, after returning from Cedar Ridge, they walked together from the stables toward her cabin. The air was crisp with approaching winter, their breath forming small clouds in the twilight. "The banker offered me a formal contract today," Tabitha announced. "Starting in January, I'll be Cedar Ridge's official teacher. They're converting the old meeting hall into a schoolhouse." "That's wonderful news," Levi said, genuine pleasure in his voice. "You've earned it." "It means I can stay," she said, looking up at him as they walked. "I can build the life I came west to find." They reached her cabin as the first stars appeared overhead. Levi hesitated at the steps, not wanting their time together to end but respectful of propriety. "Levi," Tabitha said softly, "I've been considering your question about sharing a home with you." His heart quickened. And I believe I've found my answer." She moved closer, looking up into his eyes. "But first, there's something I need to know." "Anything. When you look at me, what do you see?" "Not just now, but in the years ahead." Levi considered his words carefully. "I see a woman of remarkable strength and grace, someone who faced an uncertain future with courage and made her own path." He took her hand gently. "In the years ahead, I see a partner to build with, to face life's challenges beside. I see the mother of children we might have, teaching them to value learning and kindness as you do." Tears glistened in her eyes at his words. "Then my answer is yes, Levi Sutton. I would be honored to build a home and a life with you." Joy unlike anything he'd ever known surged through him. With gentle reverence, he leaned down and kissed her, their first kiss, sweet and promising under the vast Colorado sky. The following Sunday, they announced their engagement to the Ramseys, who received the news with knowing smiles and genuine congratulations. Plans were made for a spring wedding, after the cabin on the north pasture was completed. Through the winter months, Levi divided his time between ranch work and preparation for their future home. On days when weather permitted, he cleared the building site and dug the foundation. Tabitha taught in Cedar Ridge 3 days weekly, her reputation growing as a dedicated and skilled teacher. Their courtship blossomed despite the cold months, with chaperone visits, shared meals with the Ramseys, and planning sessions for their future. Each discovered in the other a companion who understood the value of building something lasting after years of uncertainty. By March 1874, the cabin's walls were rising on the north pasture. Tabitha would often join Levi there on Saturdays, bringing lunch and helping with tasks she could manage. Together they watched their home take shape, a modest but well-built structure with large windows to catch the light and a stone fireplace for warmth. "It's really happening," she marveled one day as they stood inside the partially completed main room. "Our home." Levi slipped his arm around her waist. "Hard to believe sometimes, isn't it? That we found each other this way." She leaned against him, fitting perfectly against his side. "Not so hard to believe. You kept your promise to see me safely settled." "I did," he agreed with a smile. "Though I never imagined settled would mean with me." April brought their wedding day, a simple ceremony in the Triple R's main house with the Ramseys, ranch hands, and Tabitha's students and their families in attendance. Tabitha wore a new blue dress with lace at the collar and cuffs, while Levi sported his best shirt and a new vest purchased for the occasion. As they spoke their vows before the local circuit preacher, Levi marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as a simple escort duty had transformed into the greatest blessing of his life. By May, their cabin was complete enough for habitation, though Levi continued adding finishing touches even after they moved in. Tabitha created a home within its walls, curtains at the windows, books on shelves he built for her, flowers in mason jars on the table they shared. Levi had purchased a small herd of cattle and 2 good horses with his savings, establishing the foundation of their ranch. They named it Sunrise, for the way morning light spilled across their land with the promise of new beginnings. On a warm evening in early summer, they sat together on their porch watching the sun descend toward the distant mountains. Tabitha's head rested against Levi's shoulder, his arm around her in comfortable familiarity. "I received a letter from Silver Creek today," she mentioned. "The school has reopened. They asked if I was still interested in the teaching position." Levi tensed slightly. "What did you tell them?" She smiled, turning to face him. "I told them I was honored by their offer, but that I had found my place teaching in Cedar Ridge." She touched his face gently. "And that I had found my home here with you." Relief and love washed through him as he drew her closer. "When I first met you, I believed the frontier was no place for love, that a man survived best by keeping to himself." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "You taught me the truth, that real strength comes from connection, not isolation." "And you showed me that home isn't just a place," she replied softly. "It's where you're truly seen and valued for who you are." As the sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Levi Sutton held his wife close, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought her into his life. What had begun as a simple promise to deliver an orphan girl to her new home had become something far more profound, a love that had built a home neither of them had dared to dream possible. Together they watched darkness settle over the land that was now theirs, secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them side by side, no longer alone, no longer adrift, but anchored in the home and love they had found in each other.